everybody. Welcome to another episode of All the WrestleManias, a podcast. I'm your co-host, Tim Hackman.
And I'm Rich Sigwald.
We're excited to be back in the studio with you. We hope you caught our recent episodes. We had a fun chat with the Director of Operations for VCW, Jerry Stefanitsis. That was a good time.
He was a good sport.
Yeah, he and Rich got into some verbal fisticuffs. That was a good one. Check it out if you haven't had a chance. And let's see, what else? We talked to Dr. Mark Willett about some academic stuff as it relates to pro wrestling. He had some good things to say. He said we made him sound interesting to his kids, so he appreciated that. And he's a nice dude. And what else? We talked about another show in between, but now I'm blanking on what it was.
Yeah, well, you know,
it was an AWA. Was it an AWA
yeah, the
show?
Super Clash. We watched Super Clash and then had Mark and then the Director of Operations on. So it's been a while since we watched something and talked wrestling, and so I'm jonesing to get in to talk some wrestling, man. It's been a while, but it was a nice little break too at the same time.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of months. Like I feel like we've been. I don't know. We've had much more scheduled than we usually do, so it's been cool. So
yeah, summer break. Sure.
Sure. Well, if you haven't, all the WrestleManias.com, WrestleMania Pod on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all the other socials, you can find us. Check us out. YouTube. We've dropped some videos lately, so you can see our lovely faces. We also experimented with some live streaming, so we're out there. We're joining the 21st century. We're going to replace ourselves with AI real soon. Can't wait for that.
I know, nice and easy.
I'm tired of staying up and recording. I'm just going to hit the button.
I might also just be Chat GPT already at this point. I don't know. Just making shit up.
Does anybody know for sure?
No, probably not.
Yeah. Anyway, well, yeah, so as Rich said, we are excited to talk some old school wrestling with you this time. This is actually from the WWF Old School series, which if you have the Peacock, you can find. They have lots of great treasures going back many decades on there. And so we are digging into Season 8, Episode 1 from December 17th, 1979, from Madison Square Garden, of course, in New York. We'll get into a little bit of why we picked this particular show, kind of continuing a series. But Rich, you identified this one. So is there something else that you really called out to you about this one that you wanted to highlight?
Well, there's some really interesting things here. First, what was the big thing that drew me in was that this is the WWF still being run by Vincent James McMahon, the current Vince McMahon's father. So it's he's Vince. Current Vince still has has developed a lot of sway in the company at this point, but he's not calling the shots. He's not the final say in things. And it's obvious. It's a little bit different style of show. The show looks a little different. It sounds a little different. So that's a lot of fun. But also the WWF is still a territory for this show too, and has rejoined the NWA. If you listen to our quick throw together episode on the history of the WWF around the time that it was sold, you remember that we talked about the WWF leaving the NWA in the late 60s, but once Mont left. I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Mont. Toots Mont left. Vince Sr. secretly, quietly said, "Hey, NWA, we'll be part of you again." And it makes for a very interesting show because the one thing that drew me in was that on this card you have Harley Race versus Dusty Rhodes for the NWA World Championship happening at Madison Square Garden. That's a Greensboro Coliseum. That's a Norfolk Scope match. That's not a Madison Square Garden match. And the other big draw to this card is that it's Hulk Hogan's Madison Square Garden debut. He's been in the WWF for 1 month at this point. He is very wet behind the ears, but very ready to go. So that's that's really exciting. And, yeah, and I don't know if you want to, we can just talk about some of the history of this show too now, if you want, just because I'm on a roll here that I mentioned that the WWF is a territory at this point, and Vincent James McMahon has no desires to take it coast to coast, and does not want to put the other territories out. He's liking the way business works. He likes how his product looks. And he likes working with the NWA because, you get the world champion stopping by every once in a while for things.
Well, and you get that talent that's so incredibly over in certain parts of the country,
Right. And you can also have a wonderful partnership with New Japan Pro Wrestling. New Japan Pro Wrestling at this time is also considered a territory of the NWA, and they are partnered up with the WWA, the World Wrestling Association, I think is what it stood for, but that's basically the West Coast, California, Southern California territory. And because of that, we see some fun names on this card come rolling through as well. The WWF has a special relationship with New Japan at this point. But because, there aren't historians documenting everything that happens in the wrestling business, just who wins and loses matches, what the terms of that seem to be pretty lost. I did some extensive digging to try and find, how did that come to be? What's going on here? And the only thing I can find is that, they're both NWA members. So, but you see some familiar names on this card because of that partnership, because Bad News Allen, Bad News Brown, however you want to remember him, was actually working with the WWA at this time. And this is just a brief little, they lent him to the WWF for this show. Same with JoJo Andrews. There's some other folks that are better known in some of the other territories, like Antonio Inoki is on this card. This card has some really, really fun names. Fujinami, Tatsumi Fujinami is a very interesting guy. He basically is the godfather of the cruiserweights.
Yeah, he's really good too. I was excited about that guy.
Yeah, and so he's the junior heavyweight championship at this point, which is actually a joint championship between WWF and New Japan Pro Wrestling. And Fujinami basically takes the belt back with him and just develops a whole thing in Japan, and it becomes basically a Japanese title. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool things on here. The other fun thing is that tag match with JoJo Andrews and Bad News Code versus Seiji Sakaguchi and Chosu Riki. So I initially was like, it's like the West Coast or North American Tag Championships or something like that, or they call it the West Coast Championship. And I'm like, is this a fake title? Is this another I'm now super paranoid.
Yeah. The AWA show was full of fake titles that were made up just for that particular event, and that was a lot of fun. Right.
So this is the NWA North American Tag Championship, the LA/Japan version. So it's the NWA's West Coast North American Tag Championship, and this actually becomes the IWGP Tag Team Championship at one point. And so the lineage is actually based off of that. And the first winners of that title were Johnny Powers and Pat Patterson. So I thought that was interesting. And so the IWGP, so this is the rabbit hole that today went down. I was like, well, I keep hearing this IWGP thing. And so the IWGP is something that Antonio Inoki made up, the International Wrestling Grand Prix. So he makes a new governing body and ditches the NWA for New Japan. So that starts a whole thing, and that ends up being the main carrier of wrestling. So I think you've heard of the G1 Climax tournament, right, in Japan. So that actually dates back to like the 50s, and the IWGP took it over in 1983. And I'll hit you some trivia here.
Okay.
Who do you think won that first 1983 IWGP League, as at that time it was called, that eventually became the G1 Climax?
Let's see. First, 1983. I don't know. Was it Flair?
Hulk Hogan.
Well, that
Hulk
would have been my
Hogan.
second guess, probably.
He beat Antonio Inoki, who had won it like 7 times already at that point. So I believe that's actually the match that's like viral right now, that like we should watch this Hulk Hogan match from Japan and see how he really works, kind of thing that's been going around.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually the finals of the IWGP League of him versus Antonio Inoki.
Yeah, we should check that out. It's like there's definitely a sort of a bit of a, this is early, right? So like we're not changing the guard here just yet, but it's like, it's definitely a couple of different worlds colliding, and you can see it with the Japanese talent all over this card. You can see it with, like you said, these NWA titles, and, you know, Dusty Rhodes and Hulk Hogan on the same card is kind of bonkers. And so I thought this was an interesting show because it feels like what it was, which is like 3 different promotions kind of stuffing a card together, all sort of under a loose umbrella that's kind of like not particularly well integrated at this point in time. So Vince McMahon is also on commentary for this one, so that's kind of, that one is pointing in a, you know, sort of future direction. It's his dad's program, but he's on the mic doing his typical Vince McMahon.
He's a little tamer.
He is. He's not quite as obnoxious just yet. But some of the same ticks are the 1, 2, got him, no.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And oh my. Yeah. So it's really fascinating. And so one of the things that I'd come across recently was very evident. And so we've been talking about all the people on this card, and it's a very diverse card. So we have a black tag team, we have lots of Japanese wrestlers, we have Hispanics, you know, we've got everybody under the sun on here. We got a Persian, we have, you know, like everybody. Yeah. We got Southerners, we have a known homosexual on the card. Like it's very diverse. This is a woke card, you could say, almost. So, and that is because Vince McMahon Sr. was very open-minded with that kind of stuff, considering with the fact that it put butts in seats in Madison Square Garden because it drew the multiculturalism of New York City into Madison Square Garden. Now, supposedly his son, Vince, did not like that so much as he wanted to get more white people to come to the shows because the white people had money.
Interesting.
And so supposedly once Vincent Kennedy took over the reins, he basically got rid of that diversity, put more white people on the card to get more white people to come to Madison Square Garden for the shows. And if you look at the roster compared, you take this show and then you look at a show in like 1984.
Yeah.
1985. The only black guy on the card is Junkyard Dog. And he's kind of
winding down at that point.
And he's kind of buried.
Yeah.
You know.
And I don't know, do we get a champion until, who was it? Ahmed Johnson who was the next, we did an episode about this.
It's like an intercontinental champion. Yeah.
Yeah. And then The Rock after that. Like there's not anybody in the middle. It's kind of crazy. So.
And supposedly it's because he won the draw in that white audience to get them in, get their money.
I mean, New York City is a pretty diverse place, Vince. Like, there's lots of people with money to spend. You know.
Yeah, but he wants that downtown Manhattan money, not the Harlem money, not the,
I guess,
upper East Side Spanish Harlem money or the Brooklyn money. You know, he wants that lower Manhattan 34th Street, you know.
Spends the same, man. Spends the same. Well, so it was interesting stuff, and we'll talk about some more as we go along. Are you ready to actually get to the card? Do you have anything else you want to check in about here first?
No, I think that's it. I loved the show, honestly, just because it's so different.
Yeah.
I was excited about it. So
it definitely feels sort of unique and kind of its own thing. So first up is Larry Zbyszko, very well known name. We've seen him on some AWA shows. Seen him with a ninja. We like that guy. And it occurred to me we need to watch more Larry Zbyszko matches after we did. But anyway, he's wrestling Dick the Bulldog Brower, who is an absolute unit. He's a power lifter, former U.S. Marine. He's short, but he's like very broad.
Yeah.
And these two kind of have a very sort of non-technical punching each other in the head kind of match with some headbutts and some headlocks. And the thing that drove me nuts with this one is there's somebody or multiple people with like whistles in the crowd, and it is going through the entire fucking thing.
It sounded like a soccer game.
It was so obnoxious. But they beat each other up pretty good. What'd you think?
Yeah, this was a hard hitting match, a good opener match, good crowd warm up, because it gets a young guy out there. We can play the age game if you want. How old do you think Dick the Bulldog Brower is at this point?
Oh man, he didn't live all that long. He died I looked up. He died at age 63. So I'm gonna say. I was trying to picture his head, his face in my mind. I'm going to say he was about late 40s.
Yeah, that's pretty good. 47. He's 47 here, wrestling a 28-year-old Larry Zbyszko.
Man.
Yeah.
And Larry's a stud. Like, Larry is clearly a stud. He gets the win in about 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Brower tries to pick him up for a body slam, and Larry Zbyszko just falls on top of him and gets the pin.
Yeah. This was my first instance of not liking Vince McMahon on the mic. He says that the ref was in perfect position, but he misses that Dick's foot is on the rope at the finish for the pin. So I don't think the ref was in a perfect position. Just my opinion. But yeah, there's lots of whistles and harmonicas too. People are blowing on harmonicas. Really
what the hell is going on? Yeah, I don't get it.
Like it sounded like a South American soccer game. That's the most I can describe. And so it's Madison Square Garden. It's a hot crowd, and they brought noisemakers. I'm pretty certain someone had an air horn too.
And like free noisemaker night at the Garden.
Yeah,
awful. Anyway, but yeah, fun match. Fairly violent, two just big old dudes wailing on each other. The next one is Riki Choshu and Seiji Sakaguchi versus Bad News Alan Coage. Is it Coage? Is that?
I think that's how you say it.
Coage and JoJo Andrews. Of course, Bad News Alan we've talked about before. Like super guy with he had a long career working in the territories. He's an old school guy. He's a badass. He's an Olympic judo champion. He was the first black medalist in judo in the Olympics. He won a silver medal, actually. I forget which games.
I think 76. I saw.
Yeah, but he was like a legit badass, and there's a lot of stories. I feel like Piper traveled with him a lot. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, and Bret Hart, young Bret Hart. Because Bad News worked a lot out of Calgary. It was Stampede Wrestling too.
Yeah, and then he came back to the WWF then a little later in the 80s, and he was Bad News Brown for a little bit. So I remember him from that run, and I remember he always wore that black glove on his right hand. Here he has sort of like a Michael Jackson white glove on his right hand.
Yeah,
it's kind of part of his gimmick. And he won't let the ref check it. The ref wants to check his glove to make sure it's loaded. He ain't having it.
Yeah, they're working heavy heel, big time heel. They're very bad guys, and part of that I can't help but the thing is because they're black. Yeah, they're the bad guys because they're black. So it's worse to be black than Japanese.
Apparently.
And they announced that this match is for the Japanese Tag Team Championship, and that's when I was like, that's got to be a fake. There's no way there was a WWF Japanese Tag Team Championship. But no, this is actually an NWA North American Tag Championships out of LA in Japan. Mm-hmm. So I already talked about the bit of the history of that. So, and it's also the current Tag Team Championship. It's the North American Tag Team Championship for New Japan Pro Wrestling at the time too. Mm. So
complicated.
We're all over the place on this. This is WWF as a territory is super complicated, and I kind of get why Vincent Kennedy was like, "Oh, enough of this bullshit. There's cable coming. I'm going to get us a cable deal, and I'm going to shut everybody down because this is too damn confusing. Everybody will work for me. We'll just do it, So."
Yeah. They go right to the heel tactics. Bad News is gouging the eyes and biting. And, Jojo is Lorge. That guy's very, his real name, I looked him up. I was sort of interested. His real name is Jimmy Lee Banks. He later went by the name Kasavubu and Sugar Bear Brown.
He went back and Sugar Bear Brown.
Isn't that great? That's a great name. Yeah. So he kind of went back and forth between the WWF, Stampede Wrestling, and WWF, kind of just back and forth over a relatively short career. He died in 1982 of complications from kidney disease and diabetes. He's only 26 when he died.
Yeah,
so
sad.
he's just what is that? 3 years. So he's like 23 here.
Yeah.
So anyway, and kind of sad story.
Yeah. Bad News? How old do you think Bad News is here?
Oh man, I don't know. He's just one of those dudes who
he always
looks like he's always been like 45. Like he looked like that when he came out of the womb.
Yeah. So he's 36 here.
36. Okay.
Yeah. And the Japanese guys are, so Seiji is 36 and Chosu is 28. So.
Wow.
Some guys in their prime and a young guy, real young guy.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
This is an all right match. I don't know. I didn't take a whole lot of notes.
There was some interesting stuff though. I liked the Boston Crab win. While Riki lands a big drop kick to keep Bad News from breaking up the hold. And this was also when I noticed that there is a ton of people ringside. There's only space on one side of the ring to do anything. So it's like the concept of working outside of the ring just isn't a thing yet at this point.
Yeah, there's no room to do it.
Yeah, literally, it's all press and ringside judges because we get told that there are ringside judges for the show from the New York Athletic Commission.
Yeah,
people don't know it's fake yet.
Yeah, so that's part of the kayfabe. That's part of selling it as a legitimate athletic contest, right?
Right, to where you foil the government into making you license your wrestlers.
Yeah. That's kind of, I don't know, you got to pay for that, right? So,
yeah.
So the New Japan guys get the win here in about 10 minutes, just a little less than 10 minutes. Fairly competitive match. People do what they're here to do. Crowd is more or less into it, I would say. I got excited seeing Bad News. I like that guy.
Yeah.
I always feel like he's just on the precipice of unspeakable violence.
Yeah, he's ready to snap at any moment. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like he's going to see his shoe untied and just punch your face in.
God damn it, kid. So we move right along. This the beginning of this show is it's a little unremarkable. It's fine, but it picks up as it goes on. The next one on the card is Mike Graham versus Johnny Rodz. So Mike, of course, is the son of promoter Eddie Graham. He died about 10 years ago, 2012. Meanwhile, Johnny Rodriguez, aka Johnny Rodz, he wrestled from 65 to 85, so he had a good long career, and he's trained wrestlers at the famous Gleason's Gym in Brooklyn. He's trained Taz, Tommy Dreamer, the Dudley Boys, so kind of a famous guy as a trainer. And Rich was saying we think maybe the Boar mentioned that he had worked with him a bit.
Yeah, I can't remember. Don't quote me on that, Boar. Please don't. I apologize.
Well, he can come back and set the record straight if we messed it up.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good idea. Just don't hurt me.
Yeah. So Rod's is kind of working heel here. He's working dirty. Graham looks good.
Yeah.
He's got kind of a Magnum TA look to him, with the hair and the mustache and stuff.
Yeah. Half of this match is Rod stalling at the beginning, refusing to be inspected and demanding more inspection of Mike Graham's equipment. And then once the ref finally goes, okay, I'll check him, Rods jumps over him and sucker punches Graham, apparently, which is Rod's big tactic, as McMahon informs us, that I bet you he's trying to get him searched so that he can jump him. And then that's what happens.
Well, way to spoil it, Vince.
Yeah.
The hell? Also, if you know he's going to do that, then maybe tell the ref to watch out for that.
Right. Maybe inform the ringside judges that this dirty tactic's going to happen and that they should suspend his license with the New York Athletic Commission.
Yeah, exactly. Bring him up in front of the board or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's Mike Graham gets a figure 4 and a submission in about 5 minutes. It's all right. It's an all right match.
Yeah. Rods does a lot of biting to get out of holds. So
he does.
That was pretty amusing.
Very tasty.
Yeah.
They spent all their marketing money on kazoos and whistles and air horns, and they didn't get any popcorn for the guys backstage.
No.
So, all right. So here's the big attraction, at least for us anyway, and that is Hulk Hogan making his Madison Square Garden debut with classy Freddie Blassie in his corner, going up against good old GCW. What's the word? Stalwart, mainstay, Ted DiBiase, who looks like a baby.
Oh my God, he looks like he's 12.
How old is?
Like
how
he
old
still
is
has
Ted
baby
here?
fat, I think.
Yeah.
Ted DiBiase is 25 years old at this point.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
How old do you think Hulk Hogan is?
Hulk Hogan, he was always a little older, right? I'm gonna say 28.
He's 26.
Oh, okay.
But Ted DiBiase's been in the business several years longer than Hulk Hogan, to where apparently after this match, Hulk Hogan thanks Ted DiBiase for putting him over.
Oh, wow.
So Vince during the introduction slips up and calls him the Incredible Hulk Hogan, but they're very deliberately saying the Fabulous Hulk Hogan. Right. He is the Fabulous Hulk Hogan. They put it up on the screen. Fabulous Hulk Hogan. And that is apparently his name because Vince Sr. Wanted him to be an Irishman. And in fact, even wanted Hulk Hogan to dye his hair red.
Wow.
And Hulk says that he was already balding at that point. So dyeing his hair was going to make it, especially with like 1970s hair dye.
Yeah, seriously.
Probably was just going to like burn his hair off. So he said, I would just be a blonde Irishman, and took the name Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. That really famous Irish given name, Hulk.
Yeah.
What a nutcase. Yeah.
Right.
No, he looks
County Londonderry,
Yeah. Where's your family from there, Hulkster? He's Mick Hulkster. He looks great. I mean, he's not as big as he will become, physically.
Not yet. Yeah.
Those pythons are not the 24-inch pythons just yet.
There may be 20 at this point.
Yeah. It's almost like he found something to help him just get bigger after this. I don't know what it could have.
It's fascinating.
I don't know what it could have been. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Guess we'll never know.
No, probably not. I mean, he's acquitted, so
yeah,
he didn't do it. He comes out in a gold cape and robe and looked like Adam Warlock to me from the comics. He looked like Adam Warlock.
Yeah, a little bit.
And
white boots, white trunks.
Yeah. And we should note that since he came out accompanied by Freddie Blassie, that means he is a bad guy. Hulk Hogan is a heel at this point and gets some serious heat. He for being there only a month, people hate him.
Yeah.
Like, it was almost as much booing as the Iron Sheik gets. You know, it was intense. So, I guess you can see where that charisma, he can turn that charisma evil as well as good. And so you can see that it's coming.
Yeah, and he heals it up pretty good during this match.
Yeah.
He gets mad at the ref and just like bodily picks the guy up and turns him around. The ref is like 4 feet tall, so it's not really fair.
It's the most ridiculously small referee I've ever seen in my life.
Especially compared to Hogan in the ring there. Just
put him in his
monsters.
pocket. Hogan is like 6'7", and this referee cannot be taller than 5 feet.
Yeah.
Like the ropes are taller than him.
He's very tiny. I don't know. This one goes a little long. It goes over 11 minutes, but they work a pretty good match, I'd say. And it's interesting, you know, Hogan's doing very, you know, his kind of, you know, typical.
Yeah.
He's not working all that differently from when he's a face.
No,
honestly.
it's really on like but the hamming to the crowd is getting boos instead of cheers, and like the shaking and looking angry is all getting like the crowd angry at him, to the point to where there is a very audible asshole chant and asshole scream. There's also a very audible use of the F word, derogatory name for homosexuals, screamed at him multiple times from the crowd as well. So, and like DiBiase is getting big pops too for the stuff that he's doing. So he's working super babyface and looking and getting great heat. They got some good charisma together in getting that crowd riled up.
Hogan gets I think he nails him with, was it a backbreaker and like a big bear hug, I think.
Yeah.
To get the win, something like that.
Yeah, because DiBiase kicks out of the leg drop.
Yeah.
So, and it was a better combination, in my opinion, that gets him to the leg drop. So Hogan does a really nice vertical suplex on DiBiase and then flips around, bounces off the ropes, and drops the big leg. But DiBiase kicks out of that. Impressive. And Hogan sold that beautifully, and just, I can definitely see out of this match why they're like, oh, this guy, you know.
Yeah. You can hear the cash register noises cha-chinging in Vince's voice as he talks about Hogan. You know, this is clearly his guy. He's ready. This is happening.
It's like he's only been wrestling a month, basically, pretty much at this point. He had been in Florida doing a little bit of stuff, but was like, this isn't working for me. And so him and the future Brutus Beefcake like work a club, and then he decides to go to Alabama, and I think it was, and they went together and were a tag team together as the Boulder Brothers. Because remember, we watched that one show, and Brutus was on that as Eric Boulder.
Right,
so.
right. Terrible name.
Yeah.
Terrible. Yeah. No, good time. Good match. It's right in the middle of the card there. It's kind of, you know, it's obviously not the main attraction yet. But it's also not a curtain jerker yet. You know, it's up there. So, and then after that, then we start to really roll into the title matches, and there are a lot of them here.
Yeah, because Hisashi Shinma comes out.
Yeah.
Who was the president of WWF before Jack Tunney. So I was blown away by that. I did not know that there was a president before Jack Tunney, and here he is. And apparently this guy went into the Hall of Fame in 2016, I think. So
yeah, well, that's cool.
Yeah. And then I was like, wow, I wonder if his stuff is the reason why there's a lot of Japanese stuff on this show. So,
yeah. So, Mr. Shinma is still alive and kicking. He's 88 years old. I guess apparently he was involved with New Japan for a long, long time. And he is in the WWF Hall of Fame. So kind of an important guy.
Yeah, I didn't realize that there was a president of the WWF, kayfabe president of the WWF before Jack Tunney. But that's him. So I thought cool. That was interesting.
Yeah. Well, so now I'm going to just go down my own rabbit hole here and see see who past and present. Oh, that's the World Wildlife Fund.
Nice.
I'm like, I'd never even heard of some of these people. Hold on. Here we go. So there's a Willie Glisenberg. That's 1963 to 1978. Died while he was still holding that position. And then Hisashi Shinma was after that, 78 to 84. Jack Tunney from 84 to 95. And Gorilla Monsoon from 95 to 97. Roddy Piper was an interim sub for Gorilla Monsoon, who was injured. And then after that, we go to the commissioner role. So there was Sergeant Slaughter from 97 to 98. Shawn Michaels from 98 to 2000. Mick Foley in 2000, 2001, kind of off and on. Deborah and William Regal 2001. That seems to be... Is that really like the last commissioner? I guess so.
Yeah.
That's a figure that's desperately needed on something like AEW. I really hoped,
for sure.
I really hoped that when Regal came over, they would put him in some kind of authority role like that. But otherwise, it's just like the kids running the preschool. It's stupid. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm now like sucked in with Jack Tunney. That Jack Tunney like ran Maple Leaf Wrestling, and his father founded it with Toots Mond, and like Jack Tunney comes off as such not a wrestling person in all his stuff, but he's actually like deeply entrenched in professional wrestling history. Like he worked with Crockett Promotions for a while and stuff like that, and anyways, Hisashi Shinma, a very fascinating guy.
Yeah, maybe a topic for another episode. So I do remember Jack Tunney. I don't remember Shinma, but I do remember Jack Tunney just being all over the show, in those years that I was watching as a kid. You're like, oh shit, now you guys are in trouble now. It's President Tunney's here to lay the smack down. So anyway, all right. Moving along. So the next up is a Texas Death Match. Good Lord. For the WWF Heavyweight Championship. That title is vacant at the moment. So you've got Bob Backlund versus Bobby Duncum. Duncum. D-U-N-C-U-M. Not Duncan. Duncum. He's alternately billed as Big Bobby Duncum, Bad Bobby Duncum, Big Bad Bobby Duncum. He is with Lou Albano, and Bob Backlund, I forgot to mention, is with Arnold Skyland as his manager.
The title wasn't vacant at this going into this match, right?
It wasn't. That's. I was just looking at another thing here that says it was vacant. November 30th. I'm reading here from PDR Wrestling, which does kind of reviews of old shows. This is what their author says. He says, November 30th, 1979, Bob Backlund defended the title against Antonio Inoki. The challenger kicked out of the champion's atomic drop and then pinned the champ with a back suplex. Everyone in Japan who watched the match saw Antonio Inoki capture the WWF title. 6 days later, Bob Backlund was granted a title rematch, and when Tiger Jeet Singh interfered, causing the match to end in a no contest, Inoki decided to vacate the championship. However, no one in the States knew this happened, and the WWF never recognized what happened. So it all sounds like it was fake, and maybe... And I guess the crowd here didn't think it was vacant, because Backlund definitely comes in as the champion, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I see that on the Wikipedia too. Yeah, fascinating.
I know, right? There's all kinds of rabbit holes on this show.
This show is so freaking weird.
So first observation is that like prime Bob Backlund is an absolute unit. I didn't realize he's kind of jacked. Like
he's a legit shooter.
Yeah,
and boring as hell.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And like Paul Heyman is like, Bob Backlund was my favorite growing up. He was so incredible. Like, really? Paul Heyman? That's the guy that you were drawn to?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
This is really slow, grinding, a lot of long headlocks, long holds. You can see Backlund talking into Duncum's head, calling the moves.
Yeah. There's this might as well have just been a normal match. I don't. They didn't do anything that would be a Texas death match like. There was no barbed wire. There was no blood. There was no chairs. There was no outside the ring action. Yeah.
The most interesting thing to happen is Backlund does this like little monkey flip thing in the corner, and he does it once, and then he tries it again and gets like kicked off.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
He wins with a kind of sunset flip thing, and then he grabs the mic and yells, "Merry Christmas."
Yeah, and I love you all. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. We're 8 days out from Christmas. Bob Backlund single-handedly winning the war on Christmas before it even began.
Yeah.
So, as we've kind of done with some other wings, I looked up some of these other guys. So, Arnold Skyland, who we've seen before in sort of a manager role, was actually a Marine in World War II. He wrestled under the name Golden Boy in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah.
And he held a tag team title with a guy named Spurios Arian. And then later he managed Backlund. He also managed Bruno Sammartino. And he was an agent for the WWF and the WWF. He's also in the Hall of Fame. He went in the same class as, he went in 97, was that?
Yeah, and so Scotland was also part owner of the WWF. I think he was part of the ownership team that Vince put together to buy it from his dad, along with Gorilla Monsoon. And Scotland also plays heavily in the whole saga of between Bob Backlund, Iron Sheik, and Hulk Hogan. So Backlund gets locked into the camel clutch in their famous match.
Yeah.
And Scotland throws in the towel. So Bob Backlund never submits.
Oh, that's him.
And
Okay.
so there's the epic argument that Bob Backlund should not have lost the belt because supposedly according to the rules you only lose by pinfall or submission. He did not submit. His coach quit for him. And so he should not have lost the belt. And that's why Iron Sheik wants to go back at Bob Backlund to prove that he could beat him, that he would just give up to the camel clutch. But Backlund was like, no, I can't. I'm hurt. Hogan needs to fight you. And so that's the whole story with that. Now, when Backlund has his renaissance in the 90s, one of the big storylines that they play up is that Bob Backlund should still be the champion because he never submitted.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that.
Threw the towel in on him. And so, like, they milk that for years. And so, yeah, Scotland is actually really an important part of WWF history and the rise of Hulkamania. Like, he's a big part of that.
Yeah, fascinating. See, look at that. We learn all kinds of stuff on this show.
And are you noticing that the managers don't stay ringside during the matches?
Yeah, they don't really do anything. They just come out
walk
with the
them
guys.
down, and then they leave.
Yeah.
What a job. They're getting paid.
There is I should have mentioned there's also a really nice pile driver from Backlund during this one. That's probably worth the price of admission. The other guy I looked up here is Bob Duncan, who is 78 and still kicking. Apparently his son, Bobby Duncan Jr., wrestled with All Japan, ECW, and he was in the WCW very briefly. He was part of the West Texas Rednecks. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Rap is crap.
Yeah, with Kurt Hennig and Barry and Kendall Windham. Unfortunately, he died of an accidental drug overdose in 2000, which is kind of sad. But his dad, Bobby Duncan, Big Bad Bobby, is still alive and kicking.
Yeah. Do you know who wrote the Rap is Crap song?
Was it Jimmy Hart?
It was. Good job. It was Jimmy Hart.
That was an educated guess.
Yeah. Good job.
I feel like Jimmy Hart doesn't believe that.
No, he does not at all. He literally has said like, you can put any words to anything as long as it's got a good hook, and that's what ended up being Rap is Crap.
Yeah. So this next one's kind of a surprise. This one got me. Antonio Inoki, who of course is super famous as Japanese wrestling and the business side of wrestling, and their biggest star for years and years, versus Hussein Arab, who is none other than our good old friend Khosrow, the Iron Sheik. He's
Bubba.
He's
Bubba
Bubba
of the Earth.
He's got his robe. He's got his pointy, curly-toed boots. He's got his beautiful mustache. He comes out and grabs a mic immediately and starts yelling about how he doesn't like America or Americans, and the crowd is like hot and trash is flying.
And how horrible American wrestlers are. That's really the big thing that he goes after. It's like, you're fighting a Japanese guy. What are you?
What are you yelling about? It's great.
But the Sheik is hated so much that the babyface can cheat in the match, and people don't. Yeah, kick his ass. Do whatever you need to do. Whatever. Get it done. So yeah, this is one of those matches where I was like, "There's no way this match ever existed, right? This doesn't exist." And then we're looking for things to watch. And I'm like, "What?
Oh shit!
Iron Sheik versus Antonio Inoki, both of them at like their prime ages in Madison Square Garden." What? We need to. Okay,
possible?
Now we need to watch this show. This one. Yeah. This has locked it in. There's
a audible "Iran sucks" chant from the crowd that even Vince has to acknowledge. So Hussein. I'm just going to call him the Sheik because
he's Iron Sheik. Iron Sheik.
Yeah, he's doing the trick where he's loading up the boot. He's kicking the toe against the mat to, like, I don't know, pull the bean bags into the toe or whatever, so he can use it as a weapon. Inoki has had enough, so he grabs his boot and starts like pulling it off of his foot. It takes forever. He's got to unlace it.
Yeah.
But the Iron Sheik gets it back and slams Inoki's head into the boot a couple of times. Manages to get some color on that one.
Yeah.
And then when the ref tries to intervene, he gets a boot to the head too.
Yep.
Boots for everybody.
Sheik just starts attacking everybody after this match. Just like,
That's
it
great.
Doesn't matter who you are. I'm amazed that he didn't get to like Vince ringside and beat the crap out of him. Like, he just goes insane.
Well, and he just rolls out of the ring and just goes up the aisle afterwards. Like, doesn't run, just kind of saunters.
Yeah,
like,
he took out like 3 refs and then he just casually walks away.
Seriously. The balls on this man.
I don't even know who won this match.
Sheik got disqualified for whooping on people with the boot.
Yeah, because initially the ref wasn't disqualifying the Sheik, even though he was literally beating Inoki in the face with his removed boot like a foreign object. And then
totally
finally they got him out.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's the Sheik at the height of his powers.
Yeah. The Sheik is 37 and Inoki is 36. This is prime. Oof. They're prime at this point.
Yeah. There's trash flying throughout this match. The crowd just doesn't let up on the booing. It's great.
Yeah, Sheik proves that it's worse to be Iranian than Japanese at this point.
At least there wasn't a USA chant. That would have been awkward.
Yeah. This crowd is very open to the Japanese wrestlers, which is impressive and awesome.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I kind of wondered, how they would be received, whether people would kind of like tune out but they're with them. They're there for the show.
Yeah.
So here's this other kind of oddball thing on the card here. This is Harley Race versus Dusty Rhodes for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship match. It's announced with a 1-hour time limit, LOL.
Please, God, no.
And the thing is, if this were an NWA card and that were the actual main event, which, I mean, I guess it's billed as the main event here, but then there's 3 matches afterwards, that it very well could have been an hour thing, but not in this city or in this time period.
I don't think Harley nor Dusty have the cardio to go an hour.
At this point.
It's going to be 45 minutes of them laying down. That's what that is going to be.
Yeah. So I have to ask, is this the title that they took from Dusty in the Garden that Cody's always crying about?
Yeah, probably. I don't think they had this match a lot, and I don't think they had it a lot in Madison Square Garden. I don't think Dusty worked there a lot. Yeah, because I mean, it's got kind of a dirty finish, kind of a weird finish. But yeah, this is there's some great things in this match, though.
Yeah, they get off to a hot start. There's lots of slugging.
Yeah.
There's blood. The blood doesn't take very long to start flowing.
No. We get Vince McMahon saying Dusty Rhodes putting the bad mouth on him.
Yeah. Dusty gets busted open from a falling headbutt. Harley does that huge falling headbutt off the second rope, which I love. And he's just selling the blood like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some good stuff here. What did you see?
There was one thing that Dusty Rhodes looked like a freaking peacock strutting around with his shoulders back and stuff like that. Like, it's fascinating that like that stuff wasn't taken as effeminate by the crowd. And that was just a thing. But also, like, I know he was really over with the black fans at the time. That's like he owes his career, basically, he says, to the black fans loving him and him playing up to that kind of stuff. So maybe that's why it wasn't seen as effeminate, because it looks effeminate even today. There's some drag queen moves in his struts and stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just it's an interesting little piece of the culture. I guess it's kind of like how people never realized Liberace was gay. Like, how did you not see that coming?
I mean, I think, a lot of his stuff reads as black. It reads as sort of like, the old term shucking and jiving. That kind of like, that's sort of like, moving around, and like you got the rhythm and all that kind of stuff. And and I mean, there's probably some. Maybe we could get Mark, Dr. Willett, back on here to talk about this, or Dr. Jess talk about sort of the connections between like drag and black culture, black kind of mannerisms and speech and that kind of thing. There's probably something to that, but you're totally right.
Dusty pulls Harley up for a pile driver.
Yes.
And then holds him there.
Yes.
Holds him upside down and turns and faces each of the four sides of the ring to the crowd before delivering the pile driver. Like, Rhodes doesn't look like he's that strong of a guy, and Harley Race is a heavy dude. This is like one of the most impressive physical feats I've seen Dusty Rhodes do, and probably almost any wrestler do, because it's not like holding him up in the suplex. This is like he's just holding him vertical between his legs. Yeah. Like, good Lord. Good Lord, man.
I know, that was nuts. And he does a nice sit down finish to it too. He doesn't botch it after all of that.
No, he finishes it off. And the other thing was there was several spots in this match that I felt would have been a disqualification under NWA rules. With like Harley Race went over the top rope. That would have, and it looked like Dusty pretty intentionally threw him, and that could have been that should have been a disqualification in NWA rules. He hits the ring post at one point. That would have been a violation of NWA rules too. Just kind of weird stuff, like that. But that's the sport, right? So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if if those NWA rules existed yet, but I felt like those rules were really old, and so I don't know. Did Harley didn't do the headbutt off the top rope, right?
No, it was off the second rope.
Yeah, so that's cool. That extra foot, that's disqualification, though.
Yeah. Dusty does his hawking up, which so Hawkster in what was it? It was the biography, the most recent biography of Dusty on A&E. They had Hogan on talking about how he stole a lot of his stuff from Dusty Rhodes. I mean, Hawk will always say that about whoever he's talking about, but like the whole, shaking and
shaking
up and
no selling shake.
No selling. Yeah, exactly. That's a clear ripoff there. So
Yeah, and this has a weird finish, as we mentioned. So Dusty is bleeding moderately. We've seen far worse.
Yeah.
But the ref calls the match because of blood. But
Yeah.
Dusty is kind of then acting blind after the match gets stopped. It's kind of weird. He's fine. Then the ref stops it, and then Dusty is swinging blindly to try and punch Harley Race. And that's when a beautiful bullshit chant starts out of Madison Square Garden. And then Harley hits Dusty with the belt, and for just because he's an asshole, I guess, and rolls out.
Yeah, it's the crowd is not having it. So it's clear Dusty kind of falls through the ropes and then falls to the floor, and then that's the point where the ref's like, all right, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
And calls it. So he's selling it like crazy, though. I mean, this is, like you said, this is on a scale from 1 to 5, this is Dusty maybe bleeding at a 2 for him. So he could have driven to the pharmacy with this much blood, but all of a sudden he can't see and he's falling out of the ring. It's okay, come on, man. So,
yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So Harley retains. Dusty gets sent home with gets some more stitches to that purple nightmare of a forehead he's got. We move on to the WWF Intercontinental Championship between Pat Patterson and Dominic DeNucci. Pat Patterson looks like a golden god. He
is beautiful.
He is beautiful. He's billed from San Francisco.
That's your hint.
There's your hint, yeah. DeNucci is sort of nondescript, and it said before we started recording that's the most Italian name I could think of.
Yeah, pretty much.
Without verging into parody or anti-Italian sentiment. He actually just died in 2021 at the age of 89. He was born in Italy, but he made his pro wrestling debut in Montreal in 1958. He wrestled all over the damn place in the 60s and 70s, and then after that went into training. He trained Mick Foley, Brian Hildebrand, Shane Douglas. So they're here to get the IC belt. I don't know. This was kind of boring.
Yeah, it was kind of a blah match, but this was one of Pat Patterson's first defenses of the new Intercontinental Championship. So he's the first Intercontinental Champion. And the way he became Intercontinental Champion was that he beat Ted DiBiase to win the WWF North American Heavyweight Championship. And then he defeated Johnny Rodz in the final of a fictional tournament in Rio de Janeiro to unify the North American Championship and the South American Championship into the Intercontinental Championship. So that's how the Intercontinental Championship gets its name. So that belt, that Intercontinental belt, beautiful.
Yeah.
It is mirror shiny, incredible. It is a beautiful title. It was more pretty than the match. But there's this match was a brawl. Basically, the finish comes out of nowhere. My favorite moment of this match was DeNucci arm drags Pat Patterson, and then as Pat pops up, he slaps him across the face. I love that little move.
Yeah,
that was good. And then Dom keeps threatening to punch Pat below the belt, but doesn't. It's just kind of a weird thing that keeps happening in this match. And then Pat flips Dom into a pin for the win, and that's it. And he hustles out of there. So,
yeah, it was pretty short, pretty uneventful. Most interesting parts were seeing that belt and seeing Pat Patterson.
Yeah,
like I said, I just looked up a little bit about him. So he had wrestled in San Francisco but he was a big time wrestling 1965 to 1977. And then he came out to the East Coast not too long after that, and he made his debut in the WWF in 79. So I guess you could kind of say you could bill him from San Francisco, but not really.
They
He's
build
still
themselves
Canadian.
from wherever they want to,
Well, that's true.
So we'll play the age game here. How old do you think Pat Patterson is in this match?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
No cheating.
What is this?
This is 79.
79. I'm going to say he's 40.
Close. He's 38.
Yeah, okay.
Now, Dominic DeNucci?
The dude looks old. I don't know. Well, let's see. Okay, I'm not going to do the math. 58, 70. I'm going to say he's also 40.
He's 47.
Jesus.
Yeah.
He looks older for sure.
He is the oldest guy on the card by a year.
Huh.
Well, I mean, I guess he's tied with Dick Brower. But yeah. So, yeah. This was a... I would have rather seen like Pat fight almost anybody else on this card. I would have liked to see Pat versus Ted DiBiase. That would have been hot.
Yeah, that would have been a good one. So we got another Japanese superstar here. It's Tatsumi Dragon Fujinami versus Johnny Rivera for the WWF Junior Heavyweight Championship. Fujinami, by the way, still kicking at 69. He trained with Antonio Inoki and Carl Gotch. He was a 6-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion in New Japan. I couldn't find much on Rivera except that he was Invader number 3.
Yeah.
There's lots of technical stuff going on in this match.
Yeah, this is early cruiserweight kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. There's like lots of holds. There's even some like things that look like, shooting takedowns and stuffing takedowns.
It's the most legit looking wrestling match on this whole card.
Yeah. What did you see?
They were moving so fast. It was really hard to get stuff, but it was really impressive stuff. It looked like a match from like mid 90s WCW cruiserweights, like Jushin Thunder Liger. It should be like kind of stuff. Like it's a fascinating, great looking stuff. Not a lot of high flying. There was no real high flying, but it was all just like legit shooting stuff. It looked like almost.
Yeah.
And they shook hands with each other,
yeah.
And it was a very fascinating little thing to watch.
Yeah, they break out of holds and then like pause and shake hands like a couple times, like during the match, not just at the beginning or at the end. Yeah, there's like head scissors, and
the crowd would clap for them too during at the breaks of those things, like a modern day wrestling show. Like it was weird. It was like a time warp.
Yeah, these guys are good. I mean, you can tell that that Fujinami is like really good. Like,
yeah,
I'd be curious to see who else he worked with in the U.S. Because if he would work with somebody like Dynamite Kid or one of those guys, I'd be very interested to find that. So maybe look around a little bit.
Yeah. The Fink keeps promising us an all-star match, and I'm like, was that it? But no, that was not. And it's another interesting thing that we didn't really point out the last time we watched one of these old school shows, but it's very apparent that there's no promos. Like,
yeah, at all.
How are these wrestlers have to get all of their charisma shown physically in the ring? It's very fascinating. Like the only way you can get over is in the ring. There's no like talking to the crowd or anything like that happening.
Yeah. The only time anybody, when Bob Backlund wishes us a Merry Christmas, and when Iron Sheik grabs the mic and yells about how America sucks, like that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the whole show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, no women's matches here, so that's also of note.
The Fabulous Moolah is still technically the women's champion at this point. She reigned for 28 years before the...
Jesus.
Yeah.
Let's see, who win? Oh, yeah, Fujinami gets the win, right? There's some sort of... It's a real quick pin. I don't know.
It's a German suplex bridge.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Like, super impressive, beautiful move. I like... This 1979 crowd in Madison Square Garden had never seen anything like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a highlight. It was a kind of, wasn't kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting. So that's a good one. All right, last match on the card. This is the WWF World Tag Team Championship. So on the one side, you've got Ivan Putski, the Polish Hammer, and you've got the Polish Power, excuse me, and you've got Tito Santana with him, and they are the champions. They're going up against Swede Hansen and Victor Rivera. So Swede Hansen was a super popular tag team with a guy named Rip Hawk. They had the belts off and on for a long time. Victor Rivera also was apparently a huge tag team draw and had a number of partners over the years. I don't know if there were ever two better good guys than Ivan and Tito. Like, those two guys are just
they're perfect.
They're so likable. They're just such faces. Tito never turned heel. I'm guessing Ivan Putski never turned heel either.
I'd imagine not. No.
Yeah. I also like how opposite they look. So Putski is kind of short and all muscle. Tito's kind of long and lean and very athletic. Swede Hansen has like a blue Andre singlet on, and appears
I
to
thought
have.
He was Larry Zonka. He looked like that football player Larry Zonka to me for some reason.
I thought he kind of looked like Jaws from James Bond. Yes.
Yeah, I could see that too. Yeah.
He has almost no muscle tone except for in his arms.
No.
That's the only thing I noticed.
He does have a denim jacket with a huge Confederate battle flag on it, though. Why? Why? I mean, at least it's getting heat in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
So people that say that symbol people didn't hate that symbol until now, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. People have found that symbol offensive for a while. Yeah, I thought Swede looked like Larry Zonka, and I thought Ivan Putski looked like a pug dog to me for some reason in this match.
You've said that before.
Yeah, they're all over the place, bouncing around.
Well, I was a little disappointed because, when Gorilla Monsoon calls an Ivan Putski match, we get a lot of background about Putski's love of garlic and onions, and how much he loves garlic and onions, and how you can smell him coming from 3 rooms away, and you also get commentary on how much he loves to sing opera, and how you always know when Ivan Putski's around because he's singing opera at the top of his lungs. We ain't get any of that here. I don't
how
feel
he
like
likes to drink. Yeah. And how he used to be fat and then lost weight. Like, Gorilla Monsoon, where are you pulling this information from on Ivan Putski? I have a very hard time believing that Ivan Putski was ever
fat.
Fat.
Yeah. I heard one time he did like only 40 reps instead of 50 in his workout. That's what
lazy.
Yeah. This is what you miss when you got Vince on the mic instead of Gorilla.
And there's no one else with him. It's very dry. It's very dry.
Yeah. So Putski gets beat up for a real long time. He finally gets a hot tag to Tito. He nails Swede with the Polish hammer in the chest. Tito comes off the ropes with the crossbody to get the pin. And then it is lights out. Good night, folks. Thanks for coming. That's the end of the show.
Yeah, that finish, though, was very reminiscent of like later tag teams having like an actual finishing combo move kind of thing.
Yep.
And you can tell that like Vince Sr. is calling the shots because the tag team championship is the big draw at the end of the night and being hyped up the entire night by the announcer, and not the heavyweight championship. So tag team wrestling still matters.
Yeah. I thought that was a pretty good tag team. I like those two guys together.
Yeah.
Swede Hansen and Victor Rivera, I'm not entirely sure why they were together.
No.
But it gave them something to do for the night.
Right.
So got Tito a paycheck. Putski got some money to afford more garlic and onions. He's still kicking too, by the way, Ivan Putski. I kind of would like to meet that guy.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would definitely pay for his autograph at a show if he was there.
He's probably like still in better shape than me. I guarantee it.
Guaranteed. Absolutely. I would get him to sign like a garlic bulb or something like that.
That'd be amazing. I wonder if he ever. I wish he would have released an opera album. That would be a collectible.
Yeah, too bad he's not on the Wrestling the album.
Yeah, that's
I've grabbed them cakes. Ivan Putski sings "O Solo Mio."
Well, so did you have a favorite match from this one?
I really felt the Ted DiBiase versus Hulk Hogan match.
You like that one?
Yeah, I think that was the most entertaining of the matches, as it
Yeah.
had a good balance of audience work plus in ring work and stuff like that. It was like a flash of the future, almost kind of like this is what's coming kind of thing. But the roles are going to be reversed, where Ted DiBiase is the bad guy and Hogan's the good guy. It's coming. Just got to wait for 5 more years for it.
5 more years. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. That match was okay. It was, it didn't do a whole lot for me. It had probably the most sort of classic kind of, wrestling match feel to it. I mean, that's probably my favorite. I think the Dragon Fujinami one was pretty good too. That would be a close contender. Least favorite for me was probably the Pat Patterson match. That was the least entertaining.
I think the Bob Backlund versus Bob Duncombe was the most boring match for me. I always find Bob Backlund boring and no personality. And then for them to have a Texas death match, and there's no need to be, they could have just been like, don't bother, don't call it that, because we're not going to do any of that shit. Don't worry. That would have been fine with me. Yeah.
That had a few decent moments in it. I like that pile driver. I like the monkey flips. I like Bob wishing us Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year, and I love all of you. Yeah, great. Thanks.
Any other final thoughts on this one before we do the in memoriam section?
This is just a fascinating little case study. Just pinch it out of time and look at it, and what in the world is going on with WWF? It's crazy. They're working with Japan. They got Hulk Hogan coming in, young. We got Bob Backlund. We got Iron Sheik and Antonio Inoki. We have, and then suddenly out of nowhere, you have Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes. The WWF is putting on a hell of a show in Madison Square Garden here, and this isn't any kind of special event. This is just whatever they're doing in their territory right now, and it's way out of what anybody else is doing. It looks like,
Yeah.
I don't think you're seeing a card this diverse in the South, any of the Southern territories, So I don't know. It's just a weird little thing to look at. It's very modern in a way, even though it's still a very classic presented wrestling match and wrestling card. That it's I am very happy that we watched this. It's a very fascinating thing to see WWF without Vincent Kennedy McMahon in charge.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's all over the place in the feel, and like you said, the presentation and the talent and the types of matches that you get here. I don't know that what if I was watching this in 1979, trying to put myself in that frame of mind. I don't know. I definitely feel this is kind of unusual, but I also don't know that I feel like this is going to be the next big thing. This company is about to blow it out of the water, because I think it's still a little fuzzy yet, right?
Right.
There's clearly energy here. There's people that want to be involved. The NWA doesn't just oh yeah, we'll send you our 2 champions, to have a match. They recognize that there's something going on here, and same thing with the partnership with Japan. But at the same time, it's not a guarantee at all at this point. There's a lot of ways that this could go south.
TV is still New York is the biggest television market at this point, and so they're on the Madison Square Garden network, because that's what this was, WWF Championship Wrestling on MSG. But they're looking for syndication deals at this point too, even though Papa McMahon does not want to branch out of the territory, because look at the talent that he drew in all over the world in this, without having to be on the hook of being his talent. It's an interesting thing, and at this point, being in the NWA, the NWA champion does have to come time to time to the territory, to each territory, to defend the belt. But normally that would have been like Harley Race versus Bob Backlund,
Right.
not Harley Race versus Dusty Rhodes. Like, why is Dusty coming up there? What's going on? But who the hell wants to see Harley Race versus Bob Backlund?
Not me.
I have no interest in watching that.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very fascinating show. It's hard to describe why, but there's all these different weird elements of like wrestlers from Japan, wrestlers from the West Coast, and wrestlers from the South, plus the New York mainstay folks here too. But like, you don't quite have a lot of them here. Like Ted DiBiase is mainly was out of the South and just new to WWF at this point. Hogan is out of the South and new to WWF. Bob Backlund and Ivan Putski really are the only two on this card that are like established WWF guys.
Yeah. So that's a good point about kind of being able to bring in like individuals as opposed to having to have, a whole roster with all these guys, right? Like, and you can pick and choose the best of the crop, and the guys that get over, you bring them back again and you do something else with them. The guys that don't, see you later. No need to book it. Do you feel like this card is like what they would call hot shotting? Like this is where you like stack a card with a whole shit ton of big names? Like to me, it is and it isn't, right? Like there are enough big names on here where you could be like, oh man, like I would definitely go to see that match and that match and that match. But then farther down the card, it's not quite the same depth. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I would call it hot shotting just because like we're looking at it from our modern day lens where we know what Ted DiBiase, Hulk Hogan, Iron Sheik, Tito Santana all become. Tito is 26 at this show. He's brand new. Larry Zbyszko is brand new to the business too, basically. Ted DiBiase and Hulk Hogan are both super young, not really fully established yet. It's like I said, and then like Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes aren't really established in New York City.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's I guess Dominic DeNucci is, Pat Patterson's new to the WWF at this point. I guarantee that like New York City the New York wrestling scene hasn't seen a lot of these New Japan guys.
Yeah.
So they might have heard of Antonio Inoki because they might read the magazines, So, it's tough to say. Iron Sheik was just up from the South too at this point too. So from a modern take at it, it looks like they hot shotted this card, but at the same time, a lot of these guys aren't fully established in this market yet.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Anyway, well, thanks for finding this one.
Yeah, this was a fun show. I like this one.
That's good stuff. So we encourage you to take a look at it and, tell us what you're thinking. Shoot us an email at allthewrestlemanias@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter for a little while yet at WrestleMania Pod. Of course, allthewrestlemanias.com. You can find us on various podcast apps. Leave us reviews. You can find us on socials. Leave us comments there. We love to hear from our listeners. So we'll wrap up by, like we always do, just take a little moment to pay tribute to the men and women, well, just men this time, that we've seen in the show who are no longer with us. So our in memoriam section for the old school episode, season 8, episode 1 from Madison Square Garden, December 17th, 1979, includes ring announcer Howard Finkel, Dick the Bulldog Brower, Bad News Allen, Jimmy Lee Banks, aka JoJo Andrews, Mike Graham, Freddie Blassie, Captain Lou Albano, Arnold Scotland, Antonio Inoki, Hussein Arab, aka the Iron Sheik, Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes, Pat Patterson, Dominic DeNucci, and Swede Hansen. So that's all for this episode. We appreciate you listening to us, and we will catch you on the next one. So for now, I'm Tim.
And I'm Rich.
Oh, have a good night, everybody.